Welcome to Veterans Archives, where we are dedicated to preserving the stories of our nation's heroes. We hope you enjoy this story. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, like and share our videos. Check us out across all social media. Be sure to like and share those pages as well. And for more information, go to www.veteransarchives.org. Today is Monday, September 22nd, 2025. We're talking with Jim Lynch, who served in the United States Air Force. So good afternoon, Jim.
Good afternoon.
Thanks for having me out today.
It's an honor.
My honor as well. I really enjoyed lunch, by the way. Thank you for that. So we'll just get started pretty easy. When and where were you born?
I was born in Brooklyn, New York, at Bay Ridge Hospital.
Okay, and did you live in Brooklyn most of your life then, as a child anyway?
Yes, I did, until I joined the Air Force on August 28th, 1951.
Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit about growing up. Did you have brothers and sisters?
I have three sisters. We're all RNs throughout the years. And I have a brother who also served in the Air Force. He's 8 years younger than me.
Okay. And where'd you kind of fall in the pecking order?
I'm the middle one. Two older and two younger.
All right. So you fall in that middle child category.
Okay.
Okay. Well, tell me a little bit about what it was like growing up with all your brothers and sisters in New York.
It was, my father worked for the New Haven Railroad, but he actually didn't work on the trains. He worked on the tugboats. He was an engineer, and they used to pull barges from New Jersey into New York Harbor, which is very busy, and it was hard to get trains into only so many slips. So, and I would go on board the vessel with him sometimes, and I could have run of the tugboat up and down the river and over to New Jersey. But once the war broke out, World War II, it was restricted, very tight security, and we were not allowed on the boats anymore. But and then World War II, things were pretty different. Things were rationed, and blackouts. You had to have all your lights out. You had to have blackout curtains, and you had air raid wardens. So it was really different living under World War II circumstances.
Yeah. What about your mom? What did she do?
By my mom?
Yeah, she a homemaker or?
She was a homemaker, but my father died from an accident early on, just at the start of the war. It had nothing to do with the war. And my mother had a difficult time to keep us 5 kids together with the rationing and in the war, and financially it was very difficult. So we had a tough time for those years until all grown up and went on our careers.
Well, and so what was school like for you then?
Well, I went to grade school and parochial school, and then I went to a vocational school in New York City. Mm-hmm. And I decided to join the Air Force. I didn't really like New York. It's so crowded, and I didn't like running the subways. And so I joined the Air Force when I was 17, about 17 and a half.
Okay. So you graduated high school, though, and then went into the Air Force?
Yes.
Okay. Talk to me a little bit about your decision to join the Air Force. Why the Air Force?
Well, it was really a brand new service, and it just sounded really interesting. Although a lot of people thought we were Greyhound bus drivers with the uniform. I heard that a lot when I was first joined, but it was an honor. And going through basic training, and the one thing sticks in my mind is when we finally learned how to march, and we stood there that evening, late afternoon, and we stood there and saluted the flag. And I really felt like, God, I'm part of a tremendous team here. It was such an honor, and I remember it's vivid in my memory to honor standing and saluting the United States flag. It was just a great honor.
Yeah, there's something about that.
Yeah, there really is. And you really feel very patriotic. And I left basic training. I was at Sampson Air Force Base. It was an old Navy base upstate New York on Lake Seneca. Mm-hmm. And it got very, very cold. So we flew down on a private aircraft, and it flew us down to Shepherd Air Force Base in Wichita Falls, Texas. And I went to aircraft mechanic school there, and I was fascinated with that. One of the first airplanes I crawled through was a B-29. And I went up through the tunnel. There was a tunnel to get to the back section. And I went in the tail gunners section. It was all, they'd have heavy green quilting fabric there as a padding. And it was all blood-stained, and I thought, oh my God, some poor soul bought it. and he was, because there's nobody could rescue him, and back in the tail gun of a
Yeah.
B-29. But we worked on some jets and reciprocating engines, B-25s, 26s, and T-33s, and so they left and we're up to Kilmer, New Jersey, and we were there for almost a month waiting to go out. It was really tough, and the barracks, I went got there late one night, and I was trying to find a bunk, and there was only one bunk available. It was in a private room within the old World War II barracks, and there was a tech sergeant there. He was been home on leave, emergency leave, and he was going back to Germany. And I said, can I use his bunk? Because he was a high-ranking NCO compared to me, one striper. So he said, sure. So all the other bunks were full. So day after day, we kept getting KP. It was really difficult, and on an Army base, it was so busy, and we were just filthy dirty from working all, and every day KP. So a lot of the guys were annoyed by this, so they got a petition going. They're going to sign a petition. And this tech sergeant gave me the best advice I've ever had in my life. He said, don't sign that, because it's like signing, it's like mutiny.
Yeah.
So I said, I'm not going to sign it. He said, oh, you like this? No, I don't care. So anyway, the next day off to KP, we all go, and noticed throughout the day these guys disappearing. I got back to the barracks after KP. Every mattress was rolled up. There was not a personal item in that barracks except my bunk and that tech sergeant. So I guess they were arrested, or court-martial for mutiny.
Definitely not a democracy, that's for sure, right?
Had my attention.
Yeah,
So,
that was great advice that he gave you.
So then we were in New Jersey and went over to the waterfront. We boarded a ship, that Private Joseph Valdez, a troop ship, and we sailed up the North Atlantic and saw a lot of whales and porpoise, and we pulled into St. John's, Newfoundland, and we stayed there the night, or done some chores there, and then went over to the Navy base, and we flew over to Ernest Harmon, where I was assigned in Newfoundland. Spent a couple months there, and then I volunteered and had an opportunity to go on a top secret mission to the North Pole, and I said, I'll go. And it was fascinating. It was like going to the moon. It was 73 years ago. So.
Yeah. Well, did they just say, hey, we have this top secret mission, who wants to go? I mean, how did the selection work for that?
Yeah. There was a line chief, and a lot of guys, the Southerners really used to rib the guys from New York, and I had a real strong New York, that Brooklyn twang, and but I wouldn't let them get my goat, and I just say, oh yeah, that's the way they all talk. They all talk funny, and that's, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how they don't. Anyway, I just humored him. So he kind of got to like me, and he said, you want to go on this? It'd be interesting. So I said, it's top secret. And okay. Well, we had secret clearance, so off I went, and I took no Class A uniform, just fatigues and Arctic clothing, but then we had a special issue of kind of boots and gloves when you go past the Arctic Circle. So we stayed in the barracks looked like a refrigerator, plastic handle doors, and there was a very tight quarters, and you only had 500 gallons of water per day because they had no plumbing underneath, and you had to conserve on water because you didn't take 5-minute showers. It's quick, lathered up, hose off, and that's it. And the water that you showered and brushed your teeth with, that's the water that flushed the toilets, and you had to pump the toilet. That's just the way it worked.
Wow.
And the captain said, who has a driver's license? So I had a military, first driver's license I ever had in my life. And he said, go up to motor pool and check out the biggest truck they got. So I went up and got a steak body, and I come back. He said, okay, now you take all the guys to chow. You come back, and you stay in the barracks. You restrict it because we're on standby. As soon as we get communications to North Pole, we're going to fly in these prefab buildings. So I'd say, chow time, and we'd jump in the truck, and I'd say, okay, it's time to go. And so, and motor pool kept calling and said, bring that truck in for inspection. I said, no, my captain said, it doesn't leave here. You want to inspect it, you got to do it here. You better. And I would bring the truck back. And we'd jump in, we'd go to the North Pole, and I'd take the key with me, and I'd go right on up to, we had trouble with the landing gear, and they opened the door, and there was a C-119 has clamshell doors. And
so this is on the flight?
Flight to Nord. It's Nord is the word, Danish word for north. And they had, so there was no equipment or anything. It was just little sheds for buildings. That's all they had. We're right on the ice. And so they opened the door and said, you're going to have to bail out because we're loaded like we were. If they landed without the gear, it would rip the belly out and we'd be killed. So, but I didn't like the idea to be. I was dress warming up. I didn't have a weapon of any kind. So, so we're circling around, and he said, "Who's a mechanic?" I said, "I am." So it was 7 of us. I didn't know the guys, but anyway, he said, "Give me a hand." We had to cross some hydraulic lines, and they're all color coded: blue, yellow, blue, with a 4-digit number. And he said, "Cross these 2 lines. If you cross-thread them, I'm going to throw you out anyway." I said, "What?" So
better get it right then, huh?
So anyway, I did get it, and he said, "Hit the gear." Well, the gear went down, but they didn't get a clear indication, so the gear was not very stable. We weren't sure, so they landed real high, and the load shifted some, and if it came all the way back, it would have crushed us all. But they got it down, and we landed right on the ice, and we had a hand pump what fuel they had left because we were almost out of fuel. And there's no, when you go to Nord, there's no alternate or emergency stop. It's there or no place on the ice. So we managed to get some fuel in it and sent them on their way, and we spent about 4 or 5 days there out of food. All they had was pumpkin pie to eat, and I do still like pumpkin pie.
So they basically they couldn't fly you back just because of the condition of the aircraft, so they just left you there.
Well, they weren't concerned that they could make it, and they didn't want to lose 7 more lives. So, and they had a crew of pilot, co-pilot, flight engineer, and I guess a navigator. But it's hard to navigate. 73 years ago at the North Pole, a compass just spins, and the magnetic pole, I understand, is 200 miles from the actual pole, and navigating is tough, and then the Russians kept sending radio signals to block our airways, so that's why we couldn't just say, oh, we're going to go today, because we had to know what the weather was, because we didn't have enough fuel to fly there and say, oh, we can't land if we come back, because Thule Air Force Base, which was just built in 1952, was 1,000 miles away, so, and that was quite an experience, and there was no cameras allowed. I had a nice new Kodak Retina camera I just bought. No cameras, no pictures, no alcoholic of anything, and never got paid. You had no haircuts, no one shaved. It was just, you had your a parka. You notice the fur in a parka. You zip it up real tight, and then you look through the fur. That's to help the Eskimos come up with that, and because you get snow blind. And we were there during the light season, so. When you go to chow hall, you say, do I think it's morning or night? So I don't breakfast, or so you serve breakfast and dinner, whatever you felt like, that's what you'd eat.
So the sun never set.
No,
right?
no, never
the whole
set.
time you were there.
Not
What did they have you doing there?
Pardon me?
What did they have you doing there?
Just manual work, you know. I said something. The guy that built Thule, he was a retired Navy commander, and all I know his name was Blowtorch Morgan. And he was a real creative guy. The story about him, they dropped a bulldozer in one time when he was building Thule, and it chutes ripped and destroyed it. So anyway, they brought another one and enough parachutes that got down, and he needed a spark plug for something, and he made a spark plug out of a piece of broom handle and coat hanger, and jammed it in there and got it to work. But he was a real creative guy, but he called all the shots. He was a civilian now, but they brought him out as and I said something about some food. He said, just go chop some ice, we need some water. And I'd chop ice and put it in this old milk can. You had to be small enough to get in there, and we'd put on a burner, a hot plate. Yeah. And so there wasn't much to do, but just stay warm. And you didn't get a medal if you got frostbitten. No. You know? You were government property, and we learned a lot about, you know, how to stay healthy. I mean, just eat properly, you know, and no alcohol at all, and not even to be constipated, because that can affect. And you learned how to always keep your head covered and your hands, because people say, well, my head's not cold. Well, your body will work to keep your head warm, so that can then send more heat to your hands and also.
Oh, okay. So really cold weather survival.
Yes.
Yeah. How long were you there?
Well, I was in and out of Newfoundland, Labrador, and Greenland for 2 years.
Okay.
Now, I'd have to go to mainland Canada sometimes to fix an airplane. If American airplanes had problem in Canada, they wouldn't fix it. They would send for us, so they'd send me. So I got to know this Sergeant Yost, the old South Carolina man. He'd say, go get your buddy electrician, another guy from Brooklyn. He said, go fix that airplane. So we'd go over and have to fix a C-54, and they were no rush to fix it. It was like a country club. They even had a still on the base there.
Really?
And I said, come on, we got to get it. There was no hangar big enough for the airplane. So, and finally the weather, I said, Lieutenant Reese, first lieutenant, I said, I've got to get back. And he said, no, relax. So anyway, we finally fixed it. It was I had a liquid like on Hamilton hydraulic prop on number 3 engine, and there was a mag drop on, a little problem with it. So we fixed that and got back. And the day we land, my crew was on duty. I said, oh God, I'm gonna have to work then. And he said, I'm glad you hit. We're short-handed. So this lieutenant says to Sergeant, does this man work for you? Yes, sir. He says, well, he's done an exceptional job. If you could see your way clear, give him off today. He said, okay, all right, go ahead. And then sometimes seaplanes in Labrador, they had some air-sea rescues, SA-16s, a twin-engine seaplane, and they used to practice saltwater landings. And sometimes they get in trouble, and one of them got a prop stuck in reverse, so all they could do was back up. Mm-hmm. So they sent us out by crash boat and in the ocean, and so they had to get back to the base to cover the base, so they left us on the seaplane, and we were a few days getting that fixed, and then getting back to my base, and then my base was socked in, so we floated around the water all night, bouncing around. And then we took on so much water because there's what they call venturis. So we must have taxied or tried to take off for 30 miles, just where. And finally the captain said, I was a skinny little kid then. He said, get in the head of the tail of the aircraft was where the latrine was, the head. Yeah. And there was another hatch. He said, get back in there. And I'm crawling in this little space, and the cables are cutting across my neck back and forth. And they tried to get enough weight down to break that suction. They finally got off, got back.
Stuffed you all the way in the back of that plane just to take off, huh?
Yeah.
So when you finished in that area, where did you go from there?
I come back to Andrews Air Force Base in August of '54, and I had a year to finish up my hitch. So they put me on transit maintenance, and also one of our jobs was to take care of the historical aircraft. That was President Roosevelt's Air Force One. They called it the Sacred Cow. The Secret Service gave it that nickname. And also the Enola Gay. I used to go up and sit in the cockpit. I thought, what was that like to punch that button? It was 150,000 people killed instant, I think, and it was always a strange feeling. I come back one day and told me there's an oil leak on number 2 engine. Go fix it. So I brought an aerostand out there, and it was a push rod leak, and I fixed it. And then General MacArthur's old B-17 was out there. The first jet bomber was a B-43, the strangest looking aircraft, 2 different sized engines in it.
Really?
Yeah, never done much on it, but it was just, we had to make sure they were tied down. There was no cats sometimes get in there, birds that make nests. You had to make sure all the tie downs were good. Of course, you had them secured to the ground. There was a couple of, there was a P-82, I think it was 2 F-51s put together, and there was a few others. There was a couple of Navy aircraft were there. They were waiting to go to the Smithsonian. Mm-hmm. So
you got to see some really interesting things that most people don't see.
Yes. Yeah,
I can't even imagine seeing the Enola Gay. I mean, that would be to sit there where the pilot sat. That's incredible.
I'd sit in the cockpit, and I think it was just, that was in 1954, the fall of 1954, and I think, oh my God. Yeah, I didn't realize then how historical that was, but they dropped that bomb. That was the first bomb, and then the boxcar was the second B-29, and it dropped the second bomb. On the first one was Nagasaki, and then that's the one that they dropped the bomb there. That was the second bomb, and Hirohito still wasn't going to resign.
Right.
So finally, they did have a third bomb, which I just reached. I have a picture of that. That was on the internet, and I guess they finally realized we don't need another third bomb, but they didn't want to hit Tokyo, I guess, because it was such a. Yeah. It was a. Yeah, but they say it saved 1 million lives, or American lives. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, that was quite an experience.
So you finished out your time in the Air Force at Andrews.
Yes.
And then, so what did you do when you got out?
I took a job in civilian life for about 6 months, and then I heard about the National Guard hiring, so I went down to the Air National Guard, and I signed up, and I became a crew chief on F-86 Sabre jets, North American made. And I'd done that for a few years, and then I went in and worked on inspections, and then.
Now, was this all right there at Andrews still?
Pardon me?
Was this right at Andrews still?
Oh, at Andrews, oh yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
We'd go to a summer camp down at Travis Field in Georgia, Savannah, Georgia, back and forth. And then, but I was full-time in uniform that whole time. Everybody thought I was military, active duty, but they didn't understand. I said, no, I just worked for the Guard. I was a civil service employee, and then the weekend warrior. And I got, working for the Guard in D.C., we got called to active duty. I've been deputized with all the inaugurals every 4 years, so the different presidents that were served, I'd be walking a beat. And then President Kennedy's assassination, of course, I was in the honor guard for his funeral, which was such an honor. In fact, 125 of us showed up, and they said, we only can have 90. And said, nobody, you can drop out, you'll still be paid. Nope, nobody moved. So he said, all right, from this rank over, you're out of here. So they just couldn't march. We didn't have room for them. We marched behind the Navy band, and I've been in a lot of parades, but never in a funeral. And a funeral is so different because it's such a slower cadence,
right? And
you just can't forget for a moment. And the Navy band played magnificently. I mean, they don't miss a beat or a sound. And the sound was bouncing off the buildings. It was like your head was inside of a stereo. And as we marched through towards the White House, they took the caisson up the driveway for the White House, for Kennedy's last trip to the White House. And the Marines were standing with port arms. That's where you hold your rifle out in front of you. And they were shoulder to shoulder. And I was on an outside rank, and you don't turn your head, of course, but I could turn my eyes. And I looked over, and I could hear, in front of me, I heard a murmur, oh God, oh God. And it got louder, and oh God. And I couldn't, why are they saying, oh God? And I saw this Marine, the tears were coming off his cheek like a faucet. Oh. And it just comes out and says, oh my God. And all the way down the line, as they would see it, they'd say, oh God, oh God, oh God. The saddest thing. It's just, I mean, that's so vivid in my memory.
People loved John F. Kennedy. The people really loved him.
They did. They loved John F. Kennedy. He was, and of course, he called me back to active duty for the Berlin crisis in '61 to '62. But that was, and as I said, the photo lab come under my jurisdiction, and his personal photographer was Wayne Sherwin, who I keep in contact with all these years. And that's why he supplied me some of these pictures I showed you earlier from the funeral. Right. But yeah, and it was cold. They said, leave the overcoats on the bus, and it was cold that day. And they marched across the 14th Street Bridge, and you're supposed to march across the bridge, route step, and I could feel the bridge swaying. But it really was a really cold day. And when they went to a church in town, I forgot the name of the church, a Catholic church, of course, they had a mass. And everybody, the dignitaries, all walked in that funeral procession. They didn't ride limousines. And here we are standing at a parade rest, and there's in front of me Charles de Gaulle, President of France, Haile Selassie, the Emperor of Ethiopia, Ted Kennedy, Sergeant Shriver, now President Johnson, and all of us. I said, oh my God, I could reach out and touch him. I was just part of it. Such a historical moment. Yeah. It was really sad.
It was.
And people sobbing. I worked my final years with the Guard. I was in 3 years in maintenance control, so I was in charge of maintenance on a fighter squadron. And on the way home that day, because I knew, and I taxied around Air Force One many times, you know, on Kennedy, and people, you'd see people stop their holding their steering wheel, sobbing and tears coming in their eyes. But the one time when I was taxiing around, this of course before his death, I was taxiing around, and Andrews has two runways parallel 1028s, the west and east, and I was in the taxiway between and holding short, aircraft coming and going, and I heard Air Force One say, Andrews Tower, this is Air Force One, we're ready to taxi. And a young fellow at the tower, I could tell he was young with his voice, he said, you'll have to hold short. We have aircraft on final. And the pilot very calmly comes back and says, negative, Air Force One does not hold. Roger, understand. And he proceeded to taxi.
He didn't know who he was talking to at first, did he?
No.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So how long did you serve in the Air Guard?
10 years. Okay.
And all at Andrews Air Force Base?
Yeah, although we traveled a lot. I've been out to McCord Air Force Base and Fort Lewis and out in the West Coast and Savannah, Georgia, a couple to Alpena, Michigan, Wisconsin, Folk Field. Okay. So yeah, it's been a lot of time. We spent a lot of time traveling and fixing airplanes, and I once went to Lake Charles, Louisiana. My airplane had nose gear collapse on a landing, so I was out there to fix it, and being a security tight SAC base, it was really tight, and they had a couple of people changed in a booster pump and didn't disconnect the electric leads, and had an explosion. I guess it must have killed them, but blew the side of the airplane out. They had B-47s. They lost, I think, 7 B-47s. Wow. And fuel, and I don't know what the capacity was, thousands of gallons, and fuel was running down like a river. And they evacuated the base because they said there was some high-powered weaponry on it. So, but
yeah,
when I was in the hangar when it first happened, the grates and the drains just popped up out of with the explosion. The concussion was so powerful. Yeah.
That must have been a little scary.
It was to evacuate a base. Yeah.
So, yeah, I'll bet.
Yeah.
So you served your time. You did your active duty and your reserve time. What did you? So why did you leave the Air National Guard?
Well, the wife was home taking care of the children, and we had. We had some health problems with the kids, and we were traveling all the time. We were just living out of a duffel bag. I might as well have been on active duty. It was just and get deputized for everything in the Civil Rights March. When Martin Luther King made his famous speech, "I have a dream," I was in the middle of that, and we were concerned. We didn't know what was going to happen. It turned out to be a very beautiful and peaceful day.
Yeah.
There was a guy, Norman Rockwell was his name, I think. He was a radical wacko, and they thought he's going to create a lot of problems, so they just formed a big circle of guardsmen around him and wouldn't let him do anything. But it turned out that the biggest thing I had to do was treat a lady for first aid. She had passed out and scraped up her knee, and she was fine. But and it turned out to be a beautiful day, but we didn't know what to expect.
Yeah. So you just never know.
And I was, it's just hard, traveling all the time and trying to. And it's hard on the wife. A lot of marriages suffered, because of we're being called on so much. That's why I'm concerned about now. Things today, the guardsmen are going to just wear out. You just can't keep hollering wolf.
Right. So where did you meet your wife?
On a blind date.
Oh, well, tell me about this.
And at the barracks at Andrews Air Force Base, I was had about 3 or 4 months to finish up my hitch. And it was a roommate, Jimmy Falgot. And Jimmy knew I had a car, and he was dating this girl, Mary Lou Perry. And he said, "You don't want to go on a blind date?" And I said, "Meet her sister." And that's Rosemarie. So I said, "Okay," because I had a car. So I went over and we went to a drive-in theater or something, and that's the love sparked, and the rest is history. But Jimmy Falgot went off on an interesting trip. They were looking for 2 senior aircraft mechanics, and the only 2 in the squadron was he and I. You had to be white, Catholic, single, high school graduate, senior aircraft mechanic. And you were going on a special mission to Spain to serve with the embassy flying into South Africa. And you got a civilian clothing allowance of $300. Well, back in 1954, that was a piece of change.
It's a lot of clothes.
Plus you got a re-up bonus. And I said, "I'm in love, and I'm not going." So so he went, and I never heard from him. I'd love to know how that turned out.
Wouldn't it be great to hear his story about that?
Wouldn't it? Yeah. Yeah.
So when did you? How long did you date before you decided to get married?
Well, we met. It was probably the fall of '54 at a little drive-in restaurant, and it was just kind of coincidental. I'd seen her there before, and then Jimmy Falgot introduced me, so that's how it all started. And then we were married July 7th of '56, so about a year after we met.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And
been married ever since.
Yeah, we've been married 69 years.
Wow.
July 7th, yeah. We have 4 children and 15 grandchildren and great-grandchildren, yeah.
So you keep busy these days, then?
Yeah. I stay busy. Well, I'm a volunteer. I've been doing funerals now with an independent group in Florida, Marion County, Memorial Honor Guard, and I've done probably about 500 to 600 funerals over the last 10, 12 years.
Wow.
And I do them here at the VFW, too.
Okay.
I've done Mel Tillis's funeral, Honor Guard, of course, John F. Kennedy's.
Yeah, I saw the pictures from the Mel Tillis
Yeah.
Which is interesting because I kind of grew up with his music
Yeah.
as a
Yeah.
kid, so
Yeah.
I remember that. So
Yeah, he was interesting.
Yeah.
And in his obituary, there was a pamphlet made up, and his mom said that apparently the stuttering works on, I think, the left side of the brain, and singing, as that's why he wouldn't stutter, and he would sing. So,
Yeah.
but he was super guy. A lot of people in Ocala knew him, and they kept saying, "I'll introduce you sometime." I'd like to person. I've seen him in person out at Branson, but I never chatted with him. But
Yeah. And anyone kind of listening to this who's never heard of Mel Tillis, they should listen to an interview with him and then listen to him sing, because he had a beautiful singing voice.
oh, he did.
He could really sing.
Yeah.
So kind of going back a little bit, so you're married, you're having kids, and it's time to not be in the military anymore.
Well, when I was in the military, I started a home improvement business. She had a nephew or a cousin, I guess it was, and Jerry was he worked for a home improvement company in Washington, D.C. And we bought our first house, and he said, "Do you want some storm windows?" And I said, "Yeah, I'd love to have some." So he hooked me up, and we got some storm windows, and I had a neighbor up the street wanted some. I said, "Jerry, you gotta want some windows." Okay, so we sold him some windows, and that started my company. He said, "Well, I don't want to be part of it." He says, "I'm moving to California with my dad. We're going to raise chinchillas." I said, "Okay." So I kind of got into windows and doors, and I'd done that for, 62, 63, 64, 65. So about 4 years, almost 5 years, I was doing it part-time with the Guard. So I sold a lot of the people within the Guard, and I started doing, more major things. And
Yeah.
so in Vietnam was breathing down my neck, and it was tough on the wife, taking care of children and health problems, they had
Right.
some surgeries. And so I just, my time was up when I got out. Plus, the money was not very good. I mean, I was making more money from my part-time businesses than I was from my full-time job.
Yeah.
So I think I was making $6,700 a year, military and civilian pay combined. And I was probably making $12,000 a year from my my company, General Home Company. So, and then over the years, I stumbled into that work at the Capitol Center, where the Washington Bullets, now called the Wizards,
Yeah.
and the Capitals hockey team. And so I was there for 20 years, and I did a lot of work. So I even did a job for Howard Hughes and AT&T, Bell Atlantic, World Bank, Remax Realty. So we used to decorate all those guys. Deloitte, Touche and Ross, the largest accounting firm. So it was really interesting.
So your company would decorate those suites, the
Wallpaper,
boxes.
carpet, and then I built cabinets. And
Right.
so I had cabinet makers that would make cabinets for me. And then, of course, I did windows and doors and siding. And if it was legal, I would tackle it.
Yeah, why not? Why not? And you ended up with a suite yourself, right, for a while?
Yeah, for 20 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you got to meet a lot of interesting, famous people through that, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. I allowed B104 during they'd done a fundraiser, and anyway, I met a lot of stars that night or that day, and so I set up a little booth, and this B104 was broadcasting from New York right there at the booth. It was neat. And then the DC 101. There was a guy by the name of Greaseman. A lot of the young guys loved it. I just thought he was amazing. He was a character. But anyway, he'd come up and people just breaking their neck to get up there. And so he was a good follower. So, and then some of them, they would bring up different stars. Like Billy Joel come up one night, and I met him, and he was really small. I didn't know he was so short. And he said, "You can ask me any question you want." He says, "Just don't ask me about my voice, because I got a cold." He said, "I sound like Rodney Dangerfield, no respect." And I cracked up. But he was really hilarious. And then Lou Gossett came up one time, and I was cooking up hot dogs. It was mid-concert. And so he jumped in, and he had hot dogs with us. And he was just down-to-earth guy.
Wow, hot dogs with Lou Gossett. That's That's something.
Yeah,
that's something. Did you meet like? I was looking at your wall. You have a lot of famous people. I saw Jimmy Page. Was he in your suite at one time too? Well,
yeah, we had an awful lot of people, and I made a lot of contacts. Like once I was invited up to an auction and through the Cap Center. It was down in Washington D.C. That's when I met Jim Brady, and then I bid on an auction. So it was to be at on stage with Kate Nally's show. That was Jane Curtin and Susan St. James. So my wife and I and my youngest daughter went up, and we're right up on the stage at the old Ed Sullivan Theater, not sitting in the seats, we're right on the stage. It took 4 hours to tape one taping of Kate and Allie, and to go quite on the set. And it was just amazing to see how it all transpired.
Yeah.
And the Ed Sullivan Theater is up on, 54th Street, and so it was really kind of interesting to be there. And I met her afterwards. We had pictures with Jane Curtin, Susan J. James. But yeah, a lot of stars would come up, and then Prince Bendar used to use the skyscraper. They didn't like security. They were worried about their children, you know, and
Right.
never any picture of him. And they always had his security people around him, but they would come up a lot of times to the suite. They like that, and his wife, Princess Haifa, and the princess called me Princess Haifa called me, and she says, "I want you to take my 2 daughters to meet George Michael." So it was a couple of weeks before. Well, if you start something in motion, then so many people get involved, it falls flat. It never happens. So I waited till the night of the event. I called back and I said, Prince Bandar, the ambassador of Saudi Arabia, his 2 daughters, Princess Lulu and Princess Nita, wanted to meet George Michael tonight. So they said, okay. So I brought them backstage with, they always sent one of their Interpol security guys, and they go back into a private room there. And George Michael was so gracious, very nice. And the girls were shaking his hand, and they were just like giddy little teenagers.
Yeah.
And with that, the one princess takes her jacket off. It's a denim jacket. And I don't know if you've seen an airbrush. They had airbrushes, and his portrait was on this airbrush. And I've seen them in Mississippi one time. They sell for $2,000 to $3,000 back then.
Yeah.
And she takes us, well, I want you to have my jacket. And George Michael says, well, I can't take that from you. She was so disappointed. And I said, George, I'm sure if the princess wants you to have it, I would please ask you to take it. He said, oh, you sure, Jim? Yeah. And he put it on his arm. Thank you. So we took it. She just smiled. And she gave him that beautiful denim jacket.
Wow.
And he was so gracious. It was nice.
That's just amazing.
Yeah.
So for 20 years, you really, this was your life then.
It really was, because I'd have to sublet it to help pay the bill, you know.
Right.
And I wouldn't do individual tickets. Corporations, I'd get, like Pepsi-Cola won it one night for, they were sponsoring this Kenny Rogers concert. So, and so I said, sure. So they had it, and so they said, let's go backstage and meet Kenny Rogers. Okay, so we went backstage and met Kenny Rogers. He was real famous, but no autographs. Posed for pictures. And we're posing for pictures, and these guys are jumping in, putting whole fingers. I stopped fooling around. I didn't know. It was the Oak Ridge Boys. Oh, no. Yeah, the Oak Ridge Boys were just horsed around us home. I didn't even recognize them.
Yeah. Yeah, those guys are funny.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I didn't realize how funny I saw them live, and they're great.
Yeah, but yeah, that's it's amazing the stars that you see and run across.
Yeah.
But it was interesting at 20 years, and it just got so costly. I just couldn't afford it anymore.
And then this whole time you were running your home improvement business?
My own business.
Okay.
But so I did a lot of work in the building for them, decorating for the wallpaper. And you learned all about carpeting, wallpaper, and cabinets, and then it would branch out like. The arenas have their tickets printed on a machine called the Boca. Boca is a company. And the way I understand it, they charge a nickel a ticket. They don't sell you the machine. They just rent it to you, a nickel a ticket. And they have a counter. So the ones that they had at the Capitol Center, and they were overheating. They'd got new machines, and they put them on the old stand. Well, they took the cowling off, and the air wasn't getting, so they were overheating. So they said, we knew a new cabinet. So I said, okay. So I went over and I worked with the people that worked with them. I said, where do you adjust them? How high, how far, how fast do you need wheels? And they just explained everything to me and where you adjust it. Do you have to know how to lock it? Because the card stock, the printers, that's like money. Because somebody could type up there. So I called my camera guy. We got to work tonight. And we worked till midnight I brought the prototype in. They said, that's great. We need 52 of them. 52. So what held me up, I finally got them. And Chicago was kind of the headquarters for hardware, and I needed casters. Well, that's over 200 casters. So they finally got them, and we shipped them. And so I just kept delivering, and they just kept, and I'd done that for about 2 years, just making. Yeah. It's kind of funny the things you get into.
Right. So when you so you ran your business as well for 20 years? Is that how long you were in the...
Well, I had my business for 42 years.
42 years.
I shut it down in August of '04.
Okay. So you were in the same area for 42 years then?
Yes.
That whole time?
In southern Maryland, just outside of Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm.
I moved to southern Maryland, but I kept the business going for 52 years. Never declared a loss.
Yeah.
Never got big, just stayed small. Just the KISS principle, keep it simple, stupid.
Right, it seems to work.
Yeah.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
So what did you do when you closed up shop?
Well, we moved up to Michigan. So we had a waterfront property, and I think I paid $155. It was right on the Patuxent River. It was a good buy. I got a bargain on it, and I sold it for $700. So we cleared about $500,000, and there was a tax where you after age 62, you didn't have to pay capital gains,
right.
which really helped us to retire, because I did have money set aside in IRAs, but so that made us. So I just shut the business down. I thanked General Holmes, said that's it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Wow.
When I selected the name, like if a guy opens a business as well as Charlie Jones Window Company, well, that's all Charlie Jones probably sells. And so I thought I'm going to branch into real estate. So General Home could have been real estate. So over the years, I did sell fence, carpeting, windows, doors, shutters, siding, and then sometimes I get involved in. Abe Pullen, who owned the Bullets, owned a company called, I'll think of it. Anyway, he was working on video conferencing. So they needed a cabinet built. This guy had invented this system, and they were bankrolling him. Mm-hmm. So I designed a cabinet for him. I got involved in it. So we had to apply for an international patent. It cost us $15,000. Anyway. I did that for a few years, and we were going to go to a big conference up in New York, and all of a sudden Abe Pullen said, he pulled the plug, said, I'm finished with it, and never went any further. But I was involved in this building this video conference, and we had copied the blueprints from back in 1929 from the patent office, and some TV stuff and information all about television was back in 1929. I had no idea.
Yeah, some of those ideas take a long time to, you got to be ready for them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So you closed up shop, you sold your house, and you moved. What brought you to Michigan?
Well, my daughter went to law school here at Cooley Law School.
Okay.
And she went to Towson University in Baltimore, and when she went to private school in Maryland. Mm-hmm. Anyway, Lorraine High School. The nuns there had the conferencing for deciding what would be, and she come home and said, I think I'd like to be a paralegal. I said, that's great, but why not just be a lawyer? Do you think I can? Sure you can. Never put her blinders on. Went right through college, 2.5 years, knocked out the 4 years, went to law school, became an attorney, and then first passed the bar, and then she found out the Foot Hospital in Jackson was looking for an attorney, and she thought I'd be on staff, but no, they didn't have a legal department. Their premium, as I remember, was for insurance jumped to $10 million a year, and that was just going to break them, because they grouped their hospital in with all the ones in Detroit, which had much higher risk of lawsuits and all. So they hired her, and of course, she had worked pre bono for a while, but so she knew about self-insuring. So she set up a corporation in the Cayman Islands, and so she had them put $3 million in a reserve account, and the biggest lawsuit they had was $50,000. So that first year. So the next year, so for 3 years they have $9 million plus interest, so they didn't have to pay any more insurance.
Wow!
And that saved them.
Genius.
Yeah.
So you moved up here because
we
of your daughter?
We moved up here in August of '54, and we lived at a senior park up here, just trying to find our way around. And we lived there for about 3 years, and we knew this house was coming up.
So it was August of 2004?
4.
Yeah. Okay.
2004.
All right.
And we lived there for 3 years, and we found this and moved into this. We bought it in October 07. So we were only here about a month, and we took off to Florida, and we come back, and then we started working on it. So
some of the other things that we talked about too before the interview was that you were an honorary colonel in the, was it in the National Guard? And so you
when
got,
I got out of the Guard in 1966, early in '66, but I'd gotten to, well, I used to help with the recruiting, so I had the Sky Suite, so I would help let them have a party and to honor some of these top recruiters. And Cal Franklin was a two-star general appointed by President Reagan. They were friends back in California, and I guess when Reagan was governor. So anyway, I got to know him, and he asked me to serve on a committee. ESGR stands for Employers Support of the Guard and Reserve. So, and I did do that. So I served with them over 20 years. I was an ombudsman for the District of Columbia and helped guardsmen and reservists if they had a problem with their employer because of their military affiliation. So during that time, he made me an honorary colonel in the Guard. So and we were having luncheon over at the Armory, and Ed Meese, the Attorney General under Reagan, was sitting next to me, and he pinned on my colonel's pin, and I said, "Wow, the Attorney General." So I asked him for a picture of him, and he signed it for my daughter, who just was an attorney. So she's tickled. She's got it hanging her off. I've got quite a few nice pictures for her. It's from different attorneys, and Sandra Day O'Connor, I got one signed from her, and so it was kind of neat. But he was very pleasant, and he was an honorary general in the Guard, and so I served with him for a number of years.
So as through your work in ESGR, though, you met a lot of different dignitaries then, correct? I mean...
Yeah, you would. Well, you know, we'd go to different bases, and they would roll out the red carpet for you, you know, meet the commanding general of different bases and all, and you'd get invited to an awful lot of banquets and dinners and luncheons, and privy to a lot of affairs at the officers' clubs and all. It was very nice. And then the Marines might sometimes take in a beach assault in a landing. One time in Mississippi, we come up right up on a beach, and people out on the beach, and what the heck? They thought it was an invasion or something.
Right.
And I've got pictures of that. And then, of course, I knew a lot of the people on the general's airplane, so I knew these crew. And a lot of times I'd ride in the cockpit in the engineer's seat, so it was kind of neat. And but the trips were amazing, and we went out and laid buoys with the Coast Guard on some of those trips, and you've probably done some of these trips.
Yeah, so the ESGR does the boss lift, is that?
Yeah, that's a boss lift, yeah.
So that's where guardsmen can invite their supervisors or bosses to go see what they do, basically.
And the objective is to take these CEOs and key people to show them the important role that the Guard and Reserve play in our national defense, because 54% or 56% of our national defense comes from the Guard and Reserve, so we get more bang for the buck.
Right.
And it's really a good system, you know, and because you can activate your Guard and poof, you back up the strength, yeah.
Yeah. So how long did you stay with the ESGR? Are you still involved with that?
Ooh, I guess I've done 20 years with them.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, many trips, and I used to help them with a lot of different things, and I'd shoot pictures of the whole event, and then I'd make a nice display, and they'd take them over to the Pentagon. Some of them were hanging up in the Pentagon, and they, to show them, because the picture's worth 1,000 words. So, and I'd show some of the places we've been, and I've gotten some nice letters back from the general saying, thanking me for how they appreciate them.
Yeah. So there's a couple things I want to talk about too. So tell me about meeting President Reagan's secretary. I thought that was really
Her name was Kathy Osborne. She lived in Clinton, Maryland, as I remember, and she was my guest that night. That was the night we had when President Reagan went to Russia and toured around, and he really enjoyed that, and he invited them back to the United States, this entourage of people. One of them was General Bolyatko, who worked on the peace negotiations, and he was my guest and spoke broken English. But anyway, Kathy Osborne was there, and she was standing at the bar, and I said, how about a signed picture from President Reagan for my daughter? She said, sure. So I asked for my card, and I gave her the card, and Peter Rozelle was the acting press secretary because James Brady was shot, but he still was alive, and so anyway he was acting. So she handed the card to Peter and said, "Peter, take care of that." And he said, "Sure thing." And on the way out, "Mr. Lynch, I'll be sure to get that picture out." And sure enough, they did. And the envelope come from the White House. It says, "White House, Washington," not the White House, Washington, D.C., 1600 Pennsylvania. It was just White House, Washington. And my daughter was like, and her secretary said, "Was there something from the White House?" And my daughter said, "Well, open it." "Yeah, but it's from the White House." My daughter says, "Open it." So she opened it. It was a signed picture. And said, "Oh my God." So,
that's incredible. Yeah. Incredible. And you met Colin Powell as well, didn't you?
Yeah, Cal Franklin invited me to a black tie affair at the Library of Congress, and I'd never been. I passed a number of times, and the ceilings in the Library of Congress are painted like the Sistine Chapel in Rome. Mm-hmm. And if anybody gets an opportunity, they should see that. It's just a gorgeous building. And so I stepped off the elevator, and there's Cal Franklin standing there with Colin Powell. "Jim, I'd like you to meet Colin Powell." Colin Powell. So we had supper with Colin Powell, this dinner affair, and there was a fellow sitting next to me. I said, "What do you do?" He said, "I'm the governor of Tennessee, Keith Grunquist." Anyway, he was not a real nice guy. He was very pleasant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What did you said something to him though when he said he was the governor of Tennessee?
I said, "It's a shame you can't do better." And we had all had a couple of sarsaparillas, I guess, and he giggled a little bit and he laughed. He took it. It was just a good joke, you know.
Yeah.
It was fun. But yeah, that was very interesting.
So, you've been in Michigan for, 21 years then, right?
Yeah. We've been in this house here. We're starting our 18th year, so long as we've ever lived in any house.
Yeah. So what have you been doing since you closed up shop and moved here?
Well, I'm active with the Guard, and in the Senior Center here, Eaton County Senior Center, they have a musical madness show every year, and for 10 years straight, I built the stage props for them. And then my wife was a line dance nut. She loves line dance, so she would choreograph and perform on the stage. And whoever thought we'd be doing this? And I did a few skits on the stage too. I dressed up as a fat Elvis, and then we do Jailhouse Rock, you know. And so we've done a lot of silly things, but the show and the pictures are all. I've got display pictures of all over the walls in the Senior Center. It was neat.
So just keeping yourself busy then.
Yeah, and then fishing in that lake out here.
Yeah.
And it's good fishing. And I just keep it up, you know, keep the beach a nice beach, and I keep that up. And of course with the VFW, you know, and I do that. And I supply them a lot of pictures. I frame up a lot of things for them, and they have them hanging in the hall. When we did that funeral for Francis Flaherty.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about the funeral for Francis Flaherty.
Francis Flaherty was an ensign in the Navy before World War II. He was in Hawaii, and the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, and he was on board the Oklahoma battleship. And he was below deck, had a flashlight, and he helped to rescue, because the lights were out from the explosion and being hit, torpedoed. So he rescued, they think, a couple hundred people, the way I heard it. And then there was still a couple hundred more below deck, and the ship rolled over, and I guess they were all drowned. And so he was given the Medal of Honor posthumously. And they raised the ship up in 1943, as I remember, and they took the remains off and put them in a grave, one of the bowls in Hawaii. Mm-hmm. And so then they took the ship out to sea and sunk it because it just was not salvageable. And over the years, with modern DNA testing, they were identifying the remains. And police escort about 3 years ago, we were sitting up at the concert at the courthouse on a Thursday night, right here in Charlotte, and we saw them coming. They had the remains, so the next day they had the funeral, and of course we were with the Honor Guard, and we were right in the midst of it. It was a huge turnout, hundreds and hundreds of people, motorcycle groups, and so we were right there in the center of it, and with the flag-draped casket, and it was just such an honor, and it was all over the TV, and so I made up a nice display, and it's hanging in the halls at the VFW. But we were honored to do that. And that's the first time I did a funeral for a Medal of Honor recipient. The Medal of Honor started in Lincoln's time, in 1865 or thereabout before. And I think there's only been 2,500 to 3,000 Medal of Honors given. So it's a pretty small percentage.
Yeah.
So it's an honor to have done a funeral for a Medal of Honor recipient. All the guys that I've done funerals with have never done a Medal of Honor recipient. Like, because we've done a lot in Bushnell, Florida, which is a huge cemetery. It's over 500 acres, and I don't know how many graves are there. But
Wow. So you got to welcome him home and lay him to rest.
yeah.
Wow. So you continue your life of service, even though you're retired and you're still working with the VFW and other organizations.
Yeah.
We've covered a lot in this interview over the last hour. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you wanted to share?
Boy, that's you come up with some really good questions. That's one of. I'm
you.
sure I'll think of something after you leave and we separate. But
Everyone does, by the way.
Yeah. Well, I just think back as a boy. I was a Boy Scout, and I loved camping as a kid. And I'd go over to Staten Island, and which they finally built that Verrazano Bridge. They said never could be done because the Verrazano Bridge is from the main support to the other. It's 1 mile. I clocked it. It's 1 mile over water, and when I grew up in New York, they said they'd never be able to build a bridge. Well, never say never. But then I'd go camping over there. It was just I loved Boy Scouts, and I caddied a lot as a kid on a golf course. That was a good source of income. It was hard work, but yeah. And I worked a lot of different jobs. Yeah, been blessed really, because grew up dirt poor and struggling, but we've made it.
It's got to be a good feeling to think about that and to think about where you're at today.
Yeah, I felt very fortunate, but I always felt like there's an opportunity, take it. It might not come again,
Well, a lot of what I've heard today, because we've spent some time together, and not just in this interview, but just in the time that I've spent with you, and you say a lot of times, it just happened. It just sort of came together, or it was just dumb luck, or whatever. Do you think though that everything happens for a reason, or do you think it is just dumb luck?
Yeah, I'm sure God must have a hand in it,
Yeah.
I look back my mistakes I've made, but I would, as far as the service, I would do it again. I don't know why more young people don't, and it really, the first thing you notice when you go in, it's not you boys, you men. And I said, men, wow. And I was so moved, but when I stood and saluted that flag of the United States, and I said, wow. It makes me tear up. Just that moment was so powerful, And I don't know if people never experience that, but and I get so offended when I see somebody flying a flag upside down or desecrating the flag. We're so fortunate to have this wonderful country, and the freedoms. I've been to so many other countries and seen the poverty and the sickness and the sorrow and the lack of, and I hear people complain, yeah, this is rough, and yeah, but you got 3 cars, you got a summer cottage, you got all kind of insurance, you got Social Security. And here you're complaining. Your kids get great education. Just drive around Michigan and see how beautiful this state is,
Yeah.
Problems, sure, we all have problems, but not like other countries, though. You saw some of the nitty-gritty about Russia, and I see on YouTube a lot, oh my God, the lady talking in the apartment, we haven't had heat here for 6 months, and terrible. 65% of the people live in apartments, and it's all government owned, and
Yeah.
I knew some people at the Cap Center went over to the Olympics or something, someplace. Anyway, when I was in Hawaii the Rolling Stones sent us to Hawaii on our wedding anniversary. I let them use the Sky Suite, this radio station, so they gave us a trip to Hawaii, all expenses.
Wow.
And
how nice.
Yeah, it was wonderful, and that was our 25th anniversary. So anyway, I come back and I had some T-shirts that what's that triathlon thing they have there to swim so far and so many miles.
Oh yeah.
So I brought back some T-shirts. Well, they went nuts over them, and I got talking to this one girl. She says, "Look what I brought back from Russia." It was a big piece of toilet paper. I said, "So what's that?" She put it in the bulletin board. There were splinters of wood in the toilet paper.
Yeah.
Russian toilet paper. What does that tell you?
That's rough.
Yeah. Some of the things, you go to a hotel, they said they have plenty of big cakes of regular, hard, lye soap and all, but they don't have any facial soap. They're oversupplied in this, and it's crazy.
Question at the end of an interview, and that is, for someone listening to this years from now when neither one of us are still here, What word of advice would you give to people, or what would you want them to take away from the way you've lived your life?
Take an opportunity when you get it, and go for the gusto. And just, if you think you can't do something, you probably can't. If you think you can, you probably will. But go for the gusto and don't let life pass you by. I mean, no matter how old you are. I'm 92 years old and I enjoy life to the fullest. And why not? And people say, well, I don't want to live that long. Wrong. I enjoy life. This is fantastic. So.
Well, great. Well, thanks for sharing your afternoon with me. I really appreciate it, Jim.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for watching Veterans Archives. We hope you enjoyed this veteran story. Please be sure to hit that subscribe button, like and share our videos, as well as checking us out on social media. We're on Facebook and TikTok, LinkedIn, X, and Instagram. Be sure to check out those pages, share, and like. And for more information about what we do, go to www.veteransarchives.org.